This music you're hearing is not by Beethoven. It's one of those delightful three-movement overture symphonies from the early classical era that we've discussed. And in a moment, I'll tell you how it relates to Beethoven, whose revolutionary, idealistic spirit would now, in 1805, be channeled into his one and only opera, Fidelio, a tale of faith, love, and heroism in the face of tyrannical oppression. And oddly enough, at this same time, Beethoven's former hero, Napoleon, was marching across Europe to settle his score with Austria, which had sent its army against France's new government a decade earlier. Keep in mind that the ill-fated Marie Antoinette of France was herself a member of the royal Habsburg family of Austria. So there was much bad blood, literally, between France and Austria. And just prior to defeating both the Austrian and the Russian armies at Austerlitz, Napoleon's troops took up residence in Vienna in late 1805, at the exact same time that Beethoven's new opera was premiered. The opera's subject matter may have been a fitting way of protesting the occupation of Vienna, but business was way off and the opera failed. But there was a bright side to this. Having put aside this opera experience now, Beethoven was freed up to return to instrumental works, a more compact, abstract means of expression. And the year 1806 saw a flood of new music, much of it in a more relaxed and genial, even pastoral idiom.
This is 1806. And already we have very enlightened men, composers like Sir William Herschel, Haydn, Beethoven, who are very interested in the cosmos, in the creation of the universe within the context of our scientific discoveries. This isn't just a mythological or biblical sort of world of creation. This is a realm where they've looked into the scientific notions. What are your thoughts on all that? And this is 1806.
Well, that goes back to my personal understanding of history as not necessarily developing from primitive to more complex or from worse to better. Those people were definitely as bright and brilliant as us, and we are as bright, as enlightened and as brilliant as them. I think human beings have curiosity and capability of exploring and creating, which is a constant. It's just harnessing that energy on a personal level for someone as a creator is a whole other universe of challenges. And Beethoven definitely knew how to harness his and how to employ and include and draw imagination and inspiration from a vast variety of sources, including, of course, science. Common knowledge might say, well, musicians and science are on the opposite spectrum of activity, which is so not true. The history and at least my own knowledge and understanding of many greatest composers proves it's completely wrong. These were people of very broad education and constantly self-educating themselves in the most foremost cutting edge things, whether it's related to physics, history, literature, philosophy, and these were what I would summarize is intensely engaged people and engaged with large variety of activity and knowledge and exploration, and that definitely enriched their output.
And it's unfortunate that the Fourth Symphony is often passed over as a weaker sister of the mighty Third and Fifth Symphonies that flank it, since the Fourth is an astounding work, beginning with its slow introduction. Yes, the same structural device that Beethoven had swept aside in his Third Symphony with those two dynamic opening chords. The slow introduction now returns in the Fourth Symphony, but with a fascinating and unexpected new sound. And the longer one lives with this music, at least in my case, the more clear things become when you step back and you take in the totality of not only the music itself, but the major influences of the day, the things that helped shape Beethoven, the man, the intellect, the seeker of knowledge and enlightenment. And by the time we get to his brilliant Seventh Symphony in 1812, by the way, the only other of Beethoven's symphonies to begin with a slow introduction, we find that he was keeping a diary, his Tagebuch, or daily book, in which we find many surprising things that fascinated him, religious, philosophic, scientific, that I am positive were embodied in an abstract, conceptual way in some of his music. And so, in my opinion, we now encounter the next example of that indefinable cosmic quality that I've mentioned in this remarkable introduction to the Fourth Symphony.
What your output is, whether you're a composer or pianist, improviser, or whatever thing you decide to do, is one thing. But your input, what you consume, what you decide to educate yourself on, what comes in, it can be varied. There's no one really dictating what you're allowed to have as an input. And in our modern age, I'm not trying to say I'm not a hypocrite when I say this. I am. I think we need to be very conscious about what we do consume and input. I think back then, perhaps, the people who we admire were really careful about what they curated for their input so that they can somehow serve their output in a very constructive and wonderful manner. I think this can range from someone like Franz Liszt and being such a linguist, as well as a traveler, as well as someone who inputs religion, spirituality, and then his output is therefore shaped by a lot of this. You have different composers, different artists who experience very different things in order to change and hopefully help their output. And so I think input-output is a very wonderful way to analyze this. And what we do output is influenced a lot by what we input. And I think I've said that word a few too many times now. So I'll give the
Chris,
stage back to you.
This is very good to emphasize on that, because clearly, as Larry Rapchak points out, there is an extraordinary amount of input related to so many different subjects which Beethoven was interested in and was consuming, not just on a casual level, but he was really into learning this stuff. And back then probably wasn't as easy as a fingertips. You couldn't Google what's going on in the cutting edge of science, of physics and universe. And so did people around him, like he's mentioning William Herschel and of course Bach, and Larry is an extraordinary researcher. When he mentions Tagebuch, I can tell you he probably read every word in it. So the information which he is including in his lectures is vetted and really goes through his own critical eye, whether it's reliable and it's actually true. So I want to believe him that composers he mentions were really outputting music which was enriched with their understanding of science and philosophy and everything. And another interesting thing he points out is the connection between Beethoven and Haydn, often overlooked connection. We think of, just linear chronological terms, Haydn, Mozart, Beethoven. But Beethoven was really learning and taking a lot of ideas from Haydn rather than Mozart.
And in 1799, Haydn's great oratorio, The Creation, was premiered in Vienna. It was a big event, and Beethoven certainly heard it. And it begins with a musical depiction of the vastness of the universe and the darkness and chaos that ruled. And it also begins with a vast column of orchestral sound, though this one is very powerful. And it's followed then by Haydn's musical representation of the vague, shapeless, unformed state of the cosmos. But I want to be clear about this. In The Creation, Haydn was using music to describe things as the text requires. He goes on in his music to evoke wind, hail, rain, and snow, and later birds, fish, lions, tigers. I don't think he does bears. Cows, horses, sheep, insects, even worms. So with the oratorio genre now, with chorus and vocal soloists and a picturesque text, Haydn was very obvious in the descriptive use of his music. And I'm not claiming that he or Beethoven were doing the same thing in the opening of their respective symphonies. But let's think about this for just another moment. That these two brilliant, enlightened men, Haydn and Beethoven, teacher and student, both fascinated with the concept of the formation of the universe and man's place in it. When their subconscious mind shifts into creative mode, that indefinable realm that transforms thoughts and stimuli into artistic expression, it's a very deep and mysterious thing that an artist may not even consciously be aware of, but which still resonates profoundly within him. So Beethoven is not actually describing anything in the introduction of the Fourth Symphony, but, and I feel very strongly that everything in his concept and design is an abstract representation of the movement of sound and matter through time and space, cutting-edge music that parallels the cutting-edge science of the day. And so now, the stasis, the equilibrium of Beethoven's universe is maintained by the steady, unalterable motion of these minute particles that we've heard, which have now shifted slightly from B-flat minor to B minor. See, they've just changed imperceptibly because of this slight shift in harmony. And this ultimately leads to a cadence in D minor, almost liturgical in tone, very interesting, over a long sustained A in the woodwinds, and there is a solemnity to this string phrase. Total calm for a few seconds as the isolated fragments now resume and they gravitate to the note A, which coalesce and expand in mass. Reverberating into the cosmos.
I have to start by saying this is one of my favorite symphonies of Beethoven. Underrated, underperformed, but such a fantastic piece. And I'm glad the first part of it was just on the introduction, basically.
That's right. And we just burst into the Allegro, and the Allegro will be saved for the next program, yeah.
Yeah, and it's just so wonderful. I've made some notes on what this introduction is about, and I never thought this is what it was. I mean, it really reflects those sort of mysterioso way in which other symphonies would have started, this expansive, slow introduction, in which you're never sure what's going to happen or when it's going to start rolling. But this is just fantastic information that relates very much to the cosmos and explains why our backgrounds are very much covered with images and videos of the space and galaxies.
Exactly. Well, Beethoven definitely took the music and put it in the on the backdrop of universe in here, and so the what Larry describes and points out so masterfully are this musical depiction of the space and Big Bang even. So everything in there, and the appearance of the Allegro at the end of this suspenseful introduction and opening does feel like something was brewing and preparing and then finally resulted in the Big Bang. And I loved how our team found that moment in music to depict it with that picture. If you missed it, scroll back and find it. It's quite impressive, and I feel like this needs to be attributed that this kind of timing is in the film is very rare unless you have musicians working on both, on the musical aspect of it and on the film aspect of it. Because as musicians, our videographers and producers of this visualization, they have very keen understanding of the timing of the suspense and expectation, and then the event. Yeah.
And that grand, joyous harmonic cadence. And that stunning event, that dynamic burst of energy on a huge, dominant seventh chord that almost blinds us with its brilliance. And suddenly the tempo quadruples in speed with those dashing upward scales, which will become very important later on. And Beethoven's ecstatic, life-affirming dance bursts forth. And we all know the Fifth Symphony's reputation as a great darkness to light work. But what about this? And the exposition's main theme, as you heard, is composed of those very same formerly inanimate particles from the introduction. Very equidistant. Yes, now they're supercharged with energy. And the theme includes those lovely descending triads in the woodwinds, which will also evolve later. Everything develops in Beethoven. Everything grows and evolves. Now, am I making too much of this? Or have these shapeless elements drifting in the void been harnessed and infused, animated, ignited with the rhythm of life? It's interesting to learn that right around this time, Beethoven was involved in a rather petty dispute with a rude theater manager. And he wrote to a colleague, quote, "I will not grovel. My world is the universe." So, okay, I get it. He was upset and probably exaggerating. But it's interesting that he used that imagery. So let's quickly take a look at this amazing exposition of the first movement. There's a new linking passage, flowing and animated very softly, with the bassoon playing the main theme fragments, like so. And Beethoven here uses those diminished chords, which we'll look at a bit later. These, and this one, and then this one. Not only for intensity, but also to connect us back to the mystery of the introduction. There, diminished chord. And the main theme now returns in the full orchestra. Then we move into the dominant key of F major, as in all good sonata movements, but it's not at all formulaic. Beethoven is always searching and innovating.
Absolutely love this symphony. It's such a banger of a first movement. You just have hit after hit, like a fantastic new theme after each, one after the other. It's just fantastic. And I mean, to hear Larry describe it is fantastic, but I just want to relish in this amazing joy of the music.
And that's the beauty, and that's how I feel so blessed working on this project with Architects of Music and Lawrence Rapchak and everyone involved, because Larry's narration is what, to me, really represents Beethoven's music in the best way. It's I'm not afraid to say it's a narration matching in its intricacy and masterfulness to the Beethoven symphonies themselves.
Yes, we don't know who the real master is, Beethoven or Larry Rapchak, because they both seem to have such a great mastery.
Both are real.
to what they do, which is, I mean, I'm not saying Larry Rapchak wouldn't compose well either, but I mean, obviously Beethoven is the composer and Larry is the narrator, which makes his composition so appealing. Yeah.
And what actually potentially gave Larry such an insight into being able to uncover and explore so deeply into the construction and the architecture of Beethoven's music, is being himself multifaceted musician. He is a pianist, he is a conductor with vast experience conducting symphony orchestras, and he's also a composer. So what we hear from him is the musicianship, the level of musicianship, and the ability to bring in all those other examples from other compositions. It's of course based on his absolutely encyclopedical knowledge of the music, but not only. He approaches every piece of music as what you can discover, what's hidden behind, how it's made of. It's almost like you see this background with the universe and particles in there. It's not only just natural curiosity how it's made, but it's curiosity which is armed with vast study and ability to really understand and discern what those particles are. It takes a physicist here, it takes a composer and a conductor and a pianist to discern what Beethoven put into those incredible masterpieces.
Yeah.
And this leads to our lively bucolic secondary theme in F major. It starts in the bassoon, echoed by the oboe, and then the flute in D minor. And you know this evokes a very rustic sound, the shepherd's piping. Yes, over sustained string chords. But wait a minute. This jolly woodwind tune. Now slow it down just a bit. Slow it down more. More. It sounds vaguely like... No, it can't be. No. Please. Tell me. It can't be. But it is. That somber, inanimate thing, the first primal material that we heard in the slow introduction. So this has been accelerated several dozen times, and now infused with life, it has evolved into this. But it happens so fast. Can we hear that again?
I think as we explore more of Beethoven's music, the reason why he's such a fascinating creator and a composer is we discover many different sides, many different facets. And what's very cool is I noticed, because we just finished the Sixth Symphony, that the secondary theme is this bucolic F major theme. And he uses this bucolic word again, quite often in the Sixth Symphony. And
yes.
So already there's this idea of the shepherd song, a rustic sound. And of course it's written to reflect, in a way, the motivic kind of the motives from the introduction. But again, we have this idea that, yes, there's a huge burst of energy within the cosmos, but let's not forget the little shepherd out there, and with the sheep and the pastoral sense of nature and the ease at which joy is easily attained. That it's not so difficult in the bigness of our universe to attain and delight in the small things that will give us more and more joyful themes. I think since this secondary theme came, we just get bigger, more and more different new themes that are just so joyful, that's so full of life. And
so overwhelmingly optimistic. It does sound very optimistic, doesn't it? The symphony itself. And this is how Beethoven created that image, that feeling of the unwithering optimism, and the tonality of it, and the construction of the theme, and making it sound like a seemingly simplistic, but not so much simplistic as connected with organic relationship with the nature and even the universe. The shepherds know how to be happy among nature.
I think it's so amazing that we have art like this to reflect upon, because the art of our modern age seems to focus a lot on the modern or on the human experience, on the human emotion, the human experience, the human struggle, the human prejudices and parts of our history which are not quite so beautiful, usually relatively ugly, or there's violence. And I think it's a good reminder to come back to what humanity and the world is really about, that in spite of the difficulties that Beethoven himself suffered through, and obviously the prejudices, the difficulties, I mean, as we know from the first episode, Napoleon had fully captured Vienna at this point, so he had little to no freedom in terms of political freedom, and he knew his country was conquered in a way, his city was conquered, and he suffered through a lot of different blasts of war, and it's not easy to be living amongst this sort of civil disturbance. Yet, look at this music. Right? And it's that the universe and the world is a dance. It's a joyful dance, and that's really inspiring.
So Beethoven's jolly reconstituted second theme is now extended into a transition, and it continually is built on the steady, repeated rhythm of the main theme. But now twice as slow, played by the strings only in bare octaves. But again, it's like a primal force of nature that gains in power, and it culminates in a robust new theme. And there's our actual closing theme, all in the dominant key of F major. So we have this new theme, followed by the closer, which is a round between the clarinet and bassoon. It's then taken up by the full orchestra, but it includes these delicate little violin interjections that shimmer like so. Twice cut short by the full orchestra. And these delicate little sounds in the violins now expand into this massive crescendo, ending in that vigorous offbeat rhythm, bam, 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 like so.